Writer, story editor, and dialogue director Kelly Ward enjoyed success as a juvenile actor in movies and television, but could see the end of his thespian career winding down when he headed toward his 30s. The calls stopped coming in as frequently, and when you stop passing for 18, that seems to be what happens. But as acting roles diminished, opportunities in animation blossomed. Kelly met veteran animation writer Jeff Siegel, and they worked together on various writing projects. And then Mr. Siegel helped Kelly secure a job as assistant story editor on GoBots, a Hanna-Barbera TV series that needed a lot of half-hour episodes in a short amount of time. Kelly relates that he quickly learned how to work against tight deadlines and stay focused. Since Mr. Ward's Hanna-Barbera baptism, he has worked on hundreds of cartoon episodes as writer, actor, voice director, and producer. At present, he directs dialogue for Disney's Jake and the Neverland Pirates and has recently completed work with co-creators Cliff McGillivray and Phil Mendez on The Note Hunter, a new children's book and projected book series. We spoke on April 21st at the Animation Guild. We are here today talking to industry veteran Kelly Ward about how you keep yourself active and relevant in a changing workplace and changing marketplace and changing industry, animation industry. And Kelly, start out by telling us how the hell you got into animation at the beginning, and what you're doing recently and now. But start at the beginning, and when you come to the end, stop.
Okay. I got into the animation business by way of an acting career that had kind of begun to stall.
Yeah.
I was a father of two. I was playing juvenile roles on TV and guest spots and an occasional feature film. And things had started to get pretty...
Because you weren't a juvenile anymore.
No, and I actually had a casting director tell me after an unsuccessful audition, we can get a real teenager to play this part. And that's when I thought, oh, golly. Really
that's when you know.
And at the time I had been working out at the Groundlings and taking improv classes. And I met a gentleman named Jeff Siegel, who had some friends in the class. And I met Jeff at one of the post-performance events. And he kind of took me under his wing. He said, would you like to work on a screenplay together? Would you like to learn to write? Because if you want to boost your acting career, why don't you do what, Sylvester Stallone has done and others have done? And I rolled my eyes and thought, oh boy.
Sure.
Dream on. But I said, I should develop another skill set. So we started writing together. And he really taught me all the nuts and bolts of screenwriting. It was like going
and where was Jeff working at the time? Was he at HB or was
Jeff was
Warner Brothers?
Just brand new at Hanna-Barbera.
Oh yeah, okay.
He had just signed on at Hanna-Barbera, and he had written a lot of screenplays and spec screenplays and others, and I think he contributed to some produced films. And he really gave 110% of his creative soul to the effort to teach me how to do this thing. And then when an opportunity opened up in Hanna-Barbera in 1984 to work on the GoBots,
oh yeah,
I was brought aboard as an associate story editor, and it is unbelievable. I had absolutely no experience show running, no experience story editing,
right,
and yet I was being brought in to work with veteran animation writers on this 60-episode extension of a miniseries.
Yeah.
And it was being thrown into the deep end.
And how did it work out?
It worked out great. It worked out great because I kept my head above water, and I kept my eyes open and learned on the job.
What are some of the things that you take away from that learning experience? Because you went in a novice and came out a seasoned veteran. Because that 60 episodes would have lasted a couple of years at least, wouldn't it?
No, actually, that's the amazing thing. We did these 60 episodes. We were greenlighting 4 premises a week to script. We were taking in 4 first draft scripts a week. We didn't ask for second drafts from the writers. We did all the rewriting ourselves, put it through the word processing system because the computers weren't linked, and there was no effective digital means of transmitting your scripts then. It went through our word processing department. Kay Wright, who was our producer, was putting through 4 storyboards a week. It was an absolute crazy machine, and we finished that thing. We started in January. I think we delivered our last script mid-June, and
in 6 months.
In 6 months.
So how much time were you spending at the studio rewriting? You must have been there 7 days a week, 6 days a week.
There were long weeks and long hours, yeah, and lots of red pencils. And we ground through red pencils because everything was red penciled and sent to word processing.
Oh, okay.
The drafts would come back, and we'd look at the revisions.
You weren't taking a digital copy and rewriting over the digital.
No, there wasn't time for that, and there were no standardized platforms. I was working on a K-Pro computer.
Oh, I remember those.
CPM operating system.
The luggable portable.
Oh my God, it was outrageous. And Jeff was working on a PC platform, and our writers were working on variations of the same.
Right. So everybody was working on different software and different computers and different.
Yeah. Getting all that reconciled was a real task.
There were no final drafts in those days.
No.
The script writing program.
No. In fact, I think once we got deeper into my career at Hanna-Barbera, everybody had found their favorite little shop that did PC platforms, and we had custom machines built.
Yeah, within 5 years, I remember. Within 5 years, I mean, most studios had their platforms and their systems. They were all somewhat different, but they all sort of were.
Yeah, somebody these are the days when there were 30 writers on staff, and we had about 30 writers on staff at HB, year in, year out.
Yeah.
And when you came off your show, you deliver your last episode, you'd be put into the development pool, and you'd develop.
Yeah.
And Hanna-Barbera would bridge you, until...
Because they needed you to be around for the next one. They didn't want to have you go off somewhere else.
Yeah, and they had a lot of syndicated puts as well.
Before your associate story editor, showrunner gig, you've been writing freelance scripts?
Spec screenplays, yeah.
And all that?
Yeah, spec screenplays and that kind of thing. And I was still going out for auditions. It's funny because initially I took the story editing job, the associate story editing job, and I told myself, I'm only going to do this for a year. I'll build up a little nest egg, and I'll go back to acting, and I'll be older.
I'll transition
I'll age into the older roles. And that didn't really happen. It was pretty silly kind of thing.
There are other juveniles that didn't.
Yeah, right.
Didn't
exactly.
Make the jump either.
Exactly. But that was a real baptism in fire, and Kay Wright was very inclusive in terms of his process. Because of the speed at which we went, he had opened the door for us to review storyboards and mark those up and request things or
so you were involved in the whole process all the way down the road, right?
And in the voice recording as well. We were invited by Gordon Hunt to attend all the record sessions, and we would do rewrites at the table reads and so forth too.
And you were up in the booth.
Yes.
Probably rewriting as the lines were delivered.
Yeah, we were allowed a little bit of kibitz room, but not much.
Were the actors allowed on those things much room for ad libs, or
not that much? Because it
was pretty locked down.
The way they would run it is we'd come into the conference room, we would sit around the table. Gordon would conduct a table read, and then we'd give the actors 5 minutes break while they went to the booth. And then we'd meet with Gordon, we'd give him the rewrites, and then we'd go in and record it like a radio play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
14 takes, and then we'd go back and do 5 or 6 pickups, and that would be the end.
So you'd have more than one member of the cast there in the...
Oh, these were all, these were ensemble casts. And we're talking people like Brock Peters and Jonathan Harris and Dick Gautier, along with our regular cast members.
Right.
Frank Welker and Bernard Earhart and
others.
Lou Richards and others.
Yeah. So after GoBots, that 6-month baptism of fire.
Yes.
So what happened then? You stayed on at Hanna-Barbera, obviously, and
Yeah.
what was your next gig?
I believe Jeff and I transitioned into being, I think it was pretty immediately after the GoBots. We became the CBS team. The studio had teams for the different networks at that time. They had a team, I think it was Tom Ruger and John Luden were the ABC guys. Jeff and I were the CBS people. Patsy Cameron and Ted Anasty and Mark Seidenberg, Rich Fogel were the NBC people, and we had groups kind of scattered around, focused on serving those clients. And so Jeff and I began pitching CBS projects that we would do there. So we did those kind of things. We did a series called Wildfire, an original series for them. I think we did a Popeye series that King Features had brought to us, and they wanted us to develop.
So, by and large, how long was each of these cycles? It was 5 months, 6 months, 8 months. You'd be in and out, or on to the next.
The series, the network projects would go a little longer because they didn't have. They had the oversight that the GoBots didn't.
Right.
The GoBots was a syndicated.
So you were pretty much free agents there. You could do what you needed to do.
We could, and oddly enough, we were our own BS&P group. We didn't try to get away with anything wild and crazy. We policed ourselves, and there's a nice freedom that comes with.
Was the vibe any difference between a network show where you have standard and practices hovering over you?
Oh yeah, it was much more protracted with a network show, and the show's got a lot more scrutiny.
They give a lot more notes.
They do.
You go from 0 to notes.
That's true, but you have to keep in mind, and the thing that I learned during that period of time was, the network is dealing with a whole slate of programs.
Right.
And they're doing multiple stories for multiple series, and where you cross or you step on the toes of another show, you can't be aware of what Muppet Babies is doing, for example, or what any of the other programs on the network schedule is doing in terms of story. And that's where we would sometimes run into problems, and we'd get notes and feedback.
It's too much like a thing that's being done over here, so change the storyline.
Yes, exactly. Or characters are similar, or certain tropes we would hit, and they didn't want to have that program conflict.
So that's the early days at HB for you, and then, so you stayed pretty much at Hanna-Barbera for 5, 6, 7 years, didn't you? You were there.
Stayed there for 6
into
years.
the 90s. So, what happened after that? Where were you?
Well, I got to cap my tenure at Hanna-Barbera writing a feature film with Mark Young that 20th Century Fox distributed called Once Upon a Forest.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great experience. It started out as a TV movie, and it got, ramped up by the good offices of David Kirshner into this feature endeavor.
Yeah.
And that was great. That was another good experience. It taught me, among other things, that you have to really be a marathoner for
especially because those things are protracted. They go on forever.
Yeah, and jokes that you thought were funny in the beginning are not funny anymore at the end of year 1.
Yeah.
And certainly by the end of year 2, you're really tired of them. They seem like chestnuts by that point.
That's right, because you've heard them too many times.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you hear dialogue coming out of a half-done story reel and finished picture, and you go, did I write that? Was that mine? I can't remember.
Yeah.
It becomes like somebody else did it because
it really
it's so
does.
long ago.
It's so distant. Television for me, over the long term, I've learned is much more gratifying because you get in, you do it, you make it as good as you can, and then you move on.
Yeah. I worked for a guy that had been in radio, network radio, and he said the same thing to me at Disney. He said, we get done with these things in 4 days. Now it's years.
Yeah.
And he wasn't always happy about that.
I like the speed because, not because I have a short attention span, but because it refreshes refreshes your palate creatively on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, because you've moved on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't worry it to death.
That's true.
So
That's true.
And that's so.
But
so,
to answer your question,
yeah.
After Hanna-Barbera, Jeff Siegel, my mentor, got offered the opportunity to start an animation unit or restart an animation unit because Walter Lantz
right.
had a unit at Universal years ago.
Yeah.
He got an opportunity to form Universal Cartoon Studios and asked me to come along, and I jumped at the chance to do that because it was something new. It was going to be a broader palette of projects, presumably, and so I jumped over there.
And that's now we're in the 1990s.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, 1990, exactly 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Universal called me, because I had just started here, and said, hey, we want to do a contract. And I was excited.
Yeah.
Because I think it was the first time that had happened to me. And it was a new unit.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we were very excited about all the possibilities before us.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had the potential to be there longer, but another opportunity opened up at MGM, and I decided to take that.
You moved on over there. And how long were you at MGM?
I was there from 92 through 96.
So there was so it's 12 men, like boom, boom. It's 12 years moving from job to job.
That's true. The Universal thing was an experiment because I had moved into the executive ranks.
Yeah. You weren't doing any writing at that point?
Writing hat in the background, but because of the executive deals, your executives couldn't have screen credit. You couldn't work that way.
Right.
It was a strange setup. It was I'm sure they had their reasons, but no official writing. But there was writing.
Rewriting in the background.
Yeah.
Now, were you back writing at MGM?
Back writing at MGM. Yeah.
So what were you doing at MGM?
Was basically doing kind of what I had been doing at Hanna-Barbera. I had an executive title at MGM, and I was also able to showrun the new Pink Panther series, which for some was kind of well, we gave the Panther a voice. That was kind of the precondition of getting a 65 episode commitment from the syndicator. So we did the unthinkable, but it turned out all right. Matt Frewer voiced the character, and we did 65 episodes in about a year's time, and it was fun.
And it's just like Tom and Jerry got voices from time to time. And
from time to time.
Tinkerbell has now gotten a voice at Disney on the direct-to-videos. So,
of course.
So they have voices. They don't have voices.
Yeah.
And there's always that segment of the population that goes, "How dare you!"
Of course, purists, and I understand it. I completely understand it. At the time, it was a job. It was great to be back writing, to work with other writers, to manage the show, to work with our directors. It really was invigorating. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So after that, what did you segue back into features? Did you stay in television?
We did do a feature at MGM. We did a sequel to All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which I co-wrote and co-produced. And that was a lot of fun and challenging as well, because this was right in that period of time when DreamWorks was getting rolling and Disney had really set the bar very high with their feature animation, and good animators, the wrists were just being snapped up and lots of money being thrown at people. And so we wound up...
It was a hot mid-90s when the sky was the limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we had to piece together, with Paul Sabella, Jonathan Dern, Mark Young, and I, we had to piece together our animation teams all around the world, from Australia to Denmark to Ireland and lands beyond to get.
So you were wearing multiple hats beyond just the writing.
Oh yeah, I'd been voice directing since my late stint at Hanna-Barbera. I'd asked to direct Once Upon a Forest in terms of being the voice director, and they graciously gave me the nod to do that. So I started wearing a lot of different hats to mix it up and to learn more about the business and try to figure out as much as I could about how everything ran.
So how much did your acting background come into play when you were voice directing? You have an idea of what you want to do, and you're drawing on your earlier other life?
Well, yeah, it's a business about the languages you speak. And the more languages you speak, the better able you are to communicate across the spectrum of our business. If you can speak art, which I don't, and I've never had made pretensions to be able to speak to an artist in artistic terms.
Right.
Other than to say, I like it, or it's not making sense to me. But in terms of dealing with the actors, I definitely had a vocabulary and an affinity for what they go through, and it gave me a lot of...
So you know what they go through because you were doing that.
Yeah. It's easy to communicate in their language, the same way that you do with writers, and that was, in fact, what my baptism in fire with the GoBots had taught me. Because more or less, in story meetings and early goings, for sure, I was more a fly on the wall, listening, developing a lexicon, learning terminology,
right,
and then later learning to apply all of that.
Figuring out what
writers.
works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And in those days, too, we wrote scripts a lot differently. At least the Hanna-Barbera model called for a lot of shots to be called out. All the camera moves were directed in the scripts. They were massively long scripts. I think our half-hour scripts.
A lot of narrative.
51 or 52 pages, and everything was described.
Pinned down for the board artist.
It was, to make it as easy for the board artist to draw it quickly. So if it was a bipack shot, he knew that that's what he had to do. This is a bipack shot. That's what we want. We want that movement toward.
And you had to learn all that.
Oh, yeah.
You had to read the scripts and figure out what the hell is this.
Exactly.
And learn as you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, by the time All Dogs Go to Heaven, you've been in the biz for 12 years, and I assume that the acting thing is way back there on a shelf. You haven't returned to more seasoned roles, or were you still going out
No,
on the occasional call?
It's funny. My family are all actors, and they're all in the business, and they're all director choreographers as well. Except for one time where the family called me up to say, we're doing a production of George M. Can you come and do a small role in it so we can say the whole family's in this show? I did not go back to acting during that period of time. I never looked.
You didn't go back and do the small part? You just didn't have the time?
I didn't have the time. Early on, I did do some voice work. That kind of, I think maybe that was Jeff's secret way of getting me really hooked or nailing one of my feet to the floor. Because on the GoBots, I did do a voice occasionally. But even that kind of fell by the wayside as writing and producing hats began to be worn more frequently.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I know, Brad Bird does voices. He did voices he did the one voice in The Incredibles. And he comes from an artist, animation, writing, directing background.
Well, when you're drawing those characters, you do imbue a lot of yourself, or the characters, you imbue them with yourself, is I guess what I was trying to say. It's different for me since I don't draw. I'm more of a listener, and I'm more of a stage performer. I don't think that I have the tools that real practiced voice actors have. I mean, I stand in awe of your Frank Welkers and your Rob Paulsons, your Corey Burtons, Jennifer Hales, and actors of that stature, because these people, they don't just do it, they don't show up to work. They practice and they work their craft all the time. And to presume to step in and work with them on something that I didn't make my main focus, I think it would make me nervous.
Yeah.
These are major league players.
Yeah.
And I'd definitely be coming up from the minors.
Yeah.
Even though I've had an acting career, I just would feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, okay, so we're up to All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah.
So, where do you go from there?
From there, I was let go by MGM. Retained to do post on the film. And once we posted the film, I moved on. I became a freelance voice director and animation scriptwriter. And for the next, well, from then to now.
From then to now, you work on this project and that project.
Yeah,
and
whatever comes along. And in some cases, I've been able to pick and choose some things and turn some projects down. Or sometimes, if I've been too busy. But most of the time, you're not that busy.
So what are some of the standouts from post MGM?
I got really lucky. Right out of the box, I got hired by Disney TV Animation to direct 101 Dalmatians for ABC.
The series?
The series.
Okay, because there were the series and then there were the video.
It was a TV series, and it was terrific. Got reunited with a lot of actors that I hadn't seen for a while. And that was a brutal schedule as well. Worked with 4 great directors on that, in Vic Cook and Skip Jones and Kent Boyer and Bob Ganaway, Tony Craig. Great
good
people.
Seasoned folks, all of them.
Terrific people.
How many did you did 65, didn't you? Or was
I think we
more?
did 65 of those.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So I got that, and I was consulting with a couple other companies as well, and then and working for Mike Young Productions as a voice director. I got hired to do a couple of shows here and there, and just piecing together a nice little patchwork quilt of some writing and some voice directing.
And doing that, and like everybody else in the business today, you go from this project to that project to that project to this project.
It was like being an actor again. And it's a funny turnaround for me, because when I first contemplated taking that GoBots job at Hanna-Barbera, it's a 9 to 5, but more than Monday through Friday, as you pointed out, it probably was Saturdays and Sundays too.
Yeah.
The thought of that was horrifying, because I'd never had a job like that. I was a freelance actor.
A whole year?
Yeah, really.
What are you saying?
It truly was unthinkable and terrifying that I'd have to go to work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
After some 16 years or 12 years of solidly working for a studio, the reverse was now true. It was horrifying to think about going back to being a freelance guy.
That's right. Even though that's how your whole career started.
Yeah. Well, mainly because I have kids at that age, at that point, that are starting to move into high school and thinking about college, and I'm scratching my head thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for
How am I going to pay for
how am I
this?
going to
You want to go where?
string enough freelance gigs together to get these kids to school?
That's the big question looming over people that are raising children.
It absolutely is.
How am I going to be able to,
It absolutely
we've had that
is.
discussion at home myself. So,
No doubt.
what are you working on now? You're working on a project called The Note Hunter?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, The Note Hunter is it's a book series that quite naturally sprang out of an idea for an animated television series. About 20 years ago, you probably recall, a lot of us writers like to toy with the idea of, I'm going to take out one of my old screenplays and I'll get somebody to turn it into a graphic novel. It'll be great! You know, they'll sell like hotcakes at Comic-Con. And I had those thoughts as well, never followed through on those. The Note Hunter is a case in which I did follow through with some really great partners.
Who are those partners?
Well, I'm working with Cliff McGilvery, another animation writer, who I met at Hanna-Barbera, who came in and wrote for me.
Yeah, now what's Cliff's background? Just a thumbnail of where he's come from and what he's done.
Cliff, well, I'll start current and work backwards. He's an animation writer. We've written in tandem as writing partners. We've won the Humanitas Prize together for writing children's animation. We've written both together and apart for many, many years. before that, Cliff was in the comic books world. And I don't know the extent to which he was in comic books. I know he wrote them. I know he edited them. I don't think he drew any comic books, but he came through that world. And prior to that, he was in the world of marketing, licensing, marketing,
So
and PR.
he's run the gamut.
He has. He's worn a lot of hats, as have I.
And then your other partners?
Other partners are Phil Mendez, who's probably well known to anybody who's watching this. Phil, with whom I worked not directly, but as a colleague at Hanna-Barbera when I was first there. He was also there, and I was well aware of his work. And
he's worked for studios and had his own studio, and
he's done it all.
He's
done it all.
Basically pitched stuff and produced stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he's run the gamut.
Phil has paintings hanging in the Louvre. I mean, he's got lots of honors, and he's a published author himself. So Phil's got a lot of stuff going on. He's involved in the project as an illustrator, and we have a digital painter in a gentleman named Hunter Wolf, who came in and did the painting because Phil was too busy.
Now, is this project a straight, a novel in the illustrations and printed word on the page? Is it a graphic novel? What is it, or is it both?
That's a great question. It's a chapter book for children ages 8 and up. I wouldn't call it a picture book because it's fairly long. It's got 21 chapters. They're not long chapters, but it's very heavily illustrated. There are about 50 illustrations in the book.
But it's not a graphic novel.
It is not a graphic novel, and it's not built like a graphic novel.
Right.
It's built to be a reading experience with illustrations that illuminate and really crystallize moments in the story for young readers.
And what is the story, and describe the story and characters?
Okay, happy to do that. As I said, it began as a series concept, and underpinning the series is that over 200 years ago, Wolfgang Mozart wrote a symphony, his crowning achievement in the last year of his life, and he called it the Perfect Symphony. He thought it was so wonderful. He set it down in gold ink, and he talked to the notes, and he nurtured in them such a sense of adventure that they leaped off the pages of the manuscript and scattered across to the four corners of the globe. And now, 200 years later, a multimillionaire philanthropist and music lover has bought this empty manuscript, and he has hired himself a private detective to ferret out all these lost notes, gather them up from wherever they are hidden around the world, put them back on the page so that the world can finally hear this symphony once and for all.
Yeah.
And that person that he's hired is the Note Hunter, a character named T.W. Strauss. He's a mouse, he's a musician, and he's in the hard-boiled detective vein of Sam Spade, except that he's a furry little guy. And that's the story.
So, have you finished this baby, and it's ready for world release?
The first book is done, and as I said, it's a series. So the first episode takes us down to, it's called The Case of the Haunted Swamp. It takes us down to the bayou in Louisiana, where mysterious sounds are coming out of the bayou. And in fact, there's a personal touch to this because the tycoon, the millionaire philanthropist, his name is Lionel Hollingsworth, his cousin, who still lives in the family homestead, is getting a little worried and getting a little spooked. And so he's thinking of selling the place because these sounds are scaring him. And so T.W. Strauss is dispatched to the bayou to figure out what's the source of these sounds. And it turns out it might just be some lost golden notes from
tied into the rest of the
Mozart.
thing. So this whole series is going to be based around just the Mozart meme, or is it going to be the Mozart in one book and then he's on to another case in another book?
He works multiple cases, but the Mozart meme is the spine of every story.
Oh, I see.
So there will be introductory adventures or moments, a la a James Bond movie, where you start out, jumping off a cliff or with some exciting prelude, and then it will eventually turn out to have something to do with these Mozart notes somewhere in the world. And it gives us entree to going into different cultures, eating different cultural different foods, experiencing different cultural phenomena around the world. And so it gives us all kinds of flavors and textures and a variety of experiences for this guy to work his way through.
So when is this book going to be released?
The book is available now on Kindle as a digital. It's an ebook, and then later this year we'll publish it in hardback.
Oh, okay, terrific.
Yeah.
And then we'll expect to see more of these things.
Absolutely. The second book's being written now, and we'll do the same process that we've done. The ebook world is interesting, and it's exciting in terms of affording people like you and me the opportunity to turn ideas that may have been sitting in a filing cabinet gathering dust, but which we still have passion for. It gives us a chance to take those out and maybe produce them in a cost-effective way and get a little satisfaction out of seeing them come to the marketplace. Perhaps not in the way that you wanted to originally, but in something that's just as gratifying.
Yeah. Well, I think especially veterans today really need to A, reinvent themselves, and B, adjust to the new marketplace and the new there's so many new distribution channels. I mean, DreamWorks Animation seems to have made a second career out of supplying content for Netflix, which is another distribution on the internet.
That's huge.
And so I think this kind of plays into that same meme of build on the internet and work out. And then do you see this going on to being a animated series, direct-to-video feature? Or what do you guys envision this thing to be down the road, or are you just going to wait and see?
I think it will tell us kind of the way characters tell you what their story is once you get into a series of adventures. It started out as a series concept, and it would be nice to see something like that realized at some point in time. But for now, the tools that are available to us are the same tools that we would use to make an animated series. And we're basically doing really refined, beautiful layouts, and they become our illustrations.
Oh, okay.
And we do spot drawings that are character study things that then get incorporated into the book. Vignettes. It's really, it takes no change in thinking at all. It's the same tools. I guess it's analogous to what software has given the music industry. You can really record a high-quality album in your basement now, given the tools that are available to musicians and composers and lyricists.
And it's all digital, so there's no tape hiss when you do multiple tracks.
Yeah, it's the same thing in publishing. And nobody's painting a rosy picture of sales either. Selling your book, that's where the work starts.
Yeah.
You do the creation of the book and the writing and the illustration out of love for telling the story. Selling it is bloody hard.
Sure.
But if you really believe in the work, you don't mind getting out there and pushing and joining groups and trying to get your material reviewed and reaching out. And this is a tremendous forum here for getting the word out about the project and hopefully, opening other people's minds to doing this with their own projects.
Yeah, because personally I think this is where a lot of the industry is going to be going. I know that Fred Seibert has talked to me about, internet distribution, and he's done a lot of it himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way for creators to go, because gosh knows it's certainly worked for quite a number of people so far. So no reason it can't work for others.
They are exciting times, and there's no reason to. What's really nice is in this format, in this format, you really don't have to worry about pleasing anybody but yourself. It
Yeah.
really is the Ricky Nelson idea made manifest. You know, please yourself.
Please yourself and move on from there.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, of the projects you worked on or the projects that you didn't work on that inspired you in animation, name your top 4.
Oh, that I did or didn't work on? Wow.
Ones that influenced you, ones that inspired you, ones that you worked on, 2 of each. Whatever.
Oh
Can
my
you think of
God.
anything off the top of your head that you'd say were grabbers in your lives? And
Well, I worked on Jakers, The Adventures of Piggly-Winks. I did work on that project, and that is the show that I won the Humanitas for Ride. And that was a high point for me.
yeah.
It was partly because, here again, from an educational standpoint, it was CG, made for television, on a budget, and it looked really good. It really looked good. It wasn't anything that looked artificial or incorrect or formative. It seemed like it was solid and it landed, and it was great storytelling. So that for me was a personal project that felt really good.
Yeah.
I'm working on a show that I can't talk too much about because it hasn't premiered yet for Disney. It's called Disney 7D.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
It's kind of a
I know that
Jay Ward
show.
approach to the Seven Dwarfs, pre-Snow White. It's raucous, it's crazy. Tom Ruger's the exec producer on it, and I think it's gonna be wildly successful.
Yeah, I think it will be too.
So it's really nice to work with Tom.
I've watched that gestate for a long time.
Yeah.
They tested and
Oh, yeah.
studied and tested and
Oh,
focus
yeah.
grouped and studied.
It's funny, but Tom and I worked kind of on parallel tracks at Hanna-Barbera at the same time. We never actually worked together other than on a few developments. And this is like after 30 years almost in the business, finally getting a chance to work together on a project.
And I know that talking to the crew, they're all excited about it too. They think it's been a challenging show for a lot of them because of all the characters and
Yeah,
the differentiations and
it's terrific.
all that.
It's terrific.
uh,
But standout projects for me were all the Disney features of my youth. As I grew up, I mean, it was really obviously the gold standard, and
oh yeah,
those pictures, interestingly, it's inspired in my brother a lifelong desire to be in the animation business.
yeah.
I wanted to be a Broadway actor, and our lives have been exactly flipped.
Really?
He's the Broadway, London West End star, and I have been the animation guy. How that worked out, I don't know. Life is funny.
You tell almost the same tale. Nick Ranieri, who's a very talented animator, I said, how did you get interested in drawing? He said, because my older brother drew, so I had to draw too.
That's funny.
And Nick stayed with it, and his older brother went, nah, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do something else. So,
It's the
isn't
funniest
that weird?
thing. It is the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspired by a sibling, and then the sibling goes in another direction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
Go figure.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kelly.
Thanks,
I
Steve.
appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again.
All righty.